All right, so what we decided to do here, because every single team doesn't make it to the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl, is we as a podcast have decided to break down the NFL team's Super Bowl of their season. Each team, we're gonna separate it by division. We're gonna separate it by conference. So we're gonna start in the AFC for part one and break down the AFC East, West, South, and North, and kind of go through and look at the individual Super Bowls of each team. That is the game that they played the best, that the fans got the most for their money for each team. And each of these guys did a little bit of homework here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through these and look at them. Okay. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kick us off. I have the AFC East. And so that means that I'm going to kind of go backwards here. And I'm going to go from the worst team in the division all the way down to the one that, well, maybe they're still playing in the playoffs now. So I'm going to start with the Jets. Jets. And we're going to look at week 8. Week 8, they played the Bungles, and they won 39-38. And that was an absolute scoring showcase by the Jets, a team that, they hadn't played very well all year.
They didn't do much scoring before that.
Not at all. This was Justin Fields' best game of his season, per se.
And by the way, this win was for Nick Mangold.
The Nick Mangold win. This was 244 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and Breece Hall threw up 133 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a passing touchdown. So Breece Hall had a fantasy game there. And so here's why this was their Super Bowl on top of the score and the win. This broke an 0-7 start to the season. So Jets fans finally got their first win. Mental relief for Fields, who, if you guys remember, he was crying in his closet before this game. He was having a mental breakdown. I think I probably would too if I had bounced around from team to team and then finally get my start, probably in the last season, and I go 0-7. So this was kind of get the monkey off the back a little bit, per se, for the Jets. This started a 2-game winning streak, so they win this game and the next. And this was the only game that they had with a relevant stat line. The rest, not very good. The only other game that I felt was close to this game for the Jets was their game in London against the Broncos, where it was 13-11. But I didn't think scoring 11 points with negative 10 passing yards would qualify as a Super Bowl. So
I would agree with you there. That's
negative 10 passing yards. It's impressive. All right. Next, Miami Dolphins. Dolphins, I had their game versus the Bills in week 10 as their Super Bowl. This game was 30-13. So they spanked the Bills in week 10. So we're talking middle of the season. Tua was still the starting quarterback at that time. Had 173 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Devon Achane had 225 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Waddle had 84 receiving yards and a touchdown. This was the start of a 4-game win streak for them. Saved Coach McDaniel's job for at least the remainder of the season, obviously, because they fired him right after the season. And they win 3 more games despite Tua. He will then lose his job to Quinn Ewers. So as a Dolphins fan, if you had to pick a game for your Super Bowl, It'd be the win over the Bills this year, who are a perennial powerhouse.
If you're watching this, Mom, would you agree with Morrison?
If you watched every game, I would say that's about the only one you could be excited about.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills fans.
Yeah.
Outside of making the playoffs, I have the Buffalo Bills, and listen, guys, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Or jumps on tables
or jumps on Bills Mafia. Ready? Bills Mafia, stand up. Now, you might disagree with me here, Bills Mafia, but I have Bills Super Bowl of the year as week 1. And now the Bills are always an exciting team. You got you got Superman. And I would say that wild card weekend, Superman showed up. However, week 1 was probably the most exciting game for them. You beat the Ravens 41-40. And if you remember, it was a 16-point fourth quarter comeback. Josh Allen threw for 394 yards, 2 touchdowns, and rushed for 2. So you talk about Superman. That's a Superman-esque game right there. Now, James Cook didn't have that great of a game, 44 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. But Keon Coleman, and where has he been? Keon Coleman had 112 receiving yards and a touchdown. And like I said, 16-point fourth quarter comeback, forced a clutch fumble on Derrick Henry, who was beside himself on the sideline. This was a playoff style game. Last year, both teams were in the playoffs against a great opponent. You know, there's a lot of question marks. Both of these teams were probably on some people's radar as being the AFC champion. And so week 1, when you get a performance like that out of Josh Allen, that's your Super Bowl, because the rest of the year, Josh Allen threw up some good numbers, but the Bills didn't necessarily do so. They have a good record, but I think a lot of Bills fans were left wanting more. And so this game, I think they were would be, if I was a Bills fan, part of the Bills Mafia, this would have been the most exciting game of the season to kick off the 2025 season and week 1. All right, last one for me, AFC East, and that is the Patriots. Now, the Patriots had a great season, still in the books, still cooking here. But I said week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. And this was a must-win game for the Ravens, if you remember, who were fighting for a playoff berth. They beat the Ravens 28-24, and their key stat leaders, this is where Drake May finally got the monkey off his back and gets a 300-yard passing game. Threw for 380 yards, and Stephon Diggs also racked up 138 receiving yards, who was also kind of needing a big game moment. And so this cemented New England into the playoffs. Drake May finally breaks 300 yards in this game and gets him at the top of the MVP conversation. If you remember this same week, Matt Stafford played the Atlanta Falcons and had an absolutely terrible game. And so this kind of put, in a lot of people's eyes, Drake May at the top of the MVP conversation, looking at week 15 or 16. And sadly, for all of the rest of us out there, it looks like New England is back on top with a franchise quarterback and a franchise coach. And this was kind of that week that a lot of people were like, oh, they didn't beat anybody good. Well,
or their cupcake schedule.
Here it is. Here is their Super Bowl outside of, well, the Super Bowl.
And what really sucks about all of this is how much we were talking up the Patriots at the beginning of the season. Not even before the season started, we said it's criminal how fast they turned the organization around. And they absolutely proved that to us as they're balling out right now. Drake May is a dog.
Oh, yeah. Drake May.
All right, Giovanni, bring us the AFC North.
All right, so I got the Browns, week 18. The opponent was the Bengals at Cincinnati. The final score was 20-18. And the key stats was Shedeur Sanders had 111 passing yards for 11 out of 22 of passes, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Uh, Dylan Sampson only had 10 carries for about 32 rushing yards. This is why there was a Super Bowl, because Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback to lead the Browns in 2026. The Bengals were fighting for at least 5 or 6 wins. I don't know, but and then the future for the Browns rookies, including Carson Schlesinger, Harold Fannin, Mason Graham, is so bright. So that's why I select the Week 18 of the Bengals for the Browns.
Yeah, I would say also, I mean, how often do you get to carry a player off the field on your shoulders?
And also Myles Garrett breaks the sack record.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that was the big one for me in that game. I mean, I was watching it and it was really. I don't want to interject, but it was really funny. So my dad was sitting around on the couch waiting the whole game for Myles Garrett to break the sack record, and then before he got up off the couch, he said, "Listen, I'm about to go take the dog out. Just watch. As soon as I get up, he's gonna break the sack record." He got up. He closed the man door, like to go outside, and all I see is Myles Garrett get the sack, stand up, and start like everyone goes crazy. And I ran out there, and I didn't care that it was cold. I was like, it happened just like you said it would. Like
Yep.
Wow.
it was crazy.
Oh,
But
every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then
shout out to Myles Garrett, bro. That was insane.
absolutely. And you got to think too, the Browns are on a 2-game winning streak going into next year.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
Got to keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Bengals.
All right, so Cincinnati Bengals. You're going to probably disagree with me, but I got the Bengals week 2 versus the Jags in Cincinnati, winning 31-27. The key stats was Jake Browning coming in from Joe Burrow, who injured his turf toe. He had 241 passing yards for 2 touchdowns, and he had 3 interceptions. Jamar Chase, he was a dog for a little bit. 165 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. And this is why there's a Super Bowl, because this was the best moment for the Bengals until they got the news of the Joe Burrow injury, and they took down a really good Jags team under Liam Cohen and T-Law.
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw how good the Jags ended up being. So to beat them with Jake Browning, that's a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, Jake,
Right.
Jake the Snake
Yeah.
cooking the Jags. That was a wild game, man. I remember that one.
Yeah. Okay, so Baltimore Ravens. Week 2, I got Ravens versus Browns in Baltimore, winning 41-17. The key stats were Lamar, being Lamar, of course, 225 passing yards, threw for 4 touchdowns, I believe 0 interceptions. Roquan Smith had a 63-yard scoop and score touchdown from Joe Flacco. So this is why there was a Super Bowl. The Ravens bounced back from a huge loss to the Bills back in week 1. And this was the best moment for the Ravens until they went kind of downfall with the Lamar injury.
Sure. Yeah. Lamar injury, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to think he was hurt, but yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers, Week 16 versus the Lions, sadly, in Detroit, 29-24. The key stats were Aaron Rodgers, 266 passing yards, threw for 1 touchdown. Jalen Warren was a monster on that game, 143 rushing yards and 2 TDs. And this is why this was their Super Bowl. They took down a good Dan Campbell-led Lions team. And I honestly think this was the best game for the Steelers for this whole season alone.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. That was so stressful, man. The whole second half of the year, bro. I was losing it basically
Yeah.
every week.
Well, if you remember, the week before they wanted Mike Tomlin fired. They were on the cusp of missing the playoffs, and this game being week 16, knowing that the Ravens were coming up, the Browns were coming up, there was a good chance that if they lose this game, they're done. They're out of the playoffs. And so winning this game against a really good opponent, keeping them out of the playoffs, basically, is that was a big win for the Steelers and Mike Tomlin at that time. So, all right.
Yeah.
Cooper bringing the South.
All right, the AFC South. We're really starting at the bottom here. The Tennessee Titans, probably one of the worst teams in the league, if we're being real. But their Super Bowl, to me at least, came Week 16 against the Kansas City Chiefs, where they won 26-9. Chiefs, the key stat leaders for the Titans: Tony Pollard, 100-plus rushing yards; Cam Ward, 230 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Good showing for them on offense, which did not happen much that whole season. I mean, it was just a Super Bowl for them because it was a strong showing on both sides of the ball against the previous powerhouse, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes, good use of the word previous, because this was post Patrick Mahomes ACL.
This is when we had really realized it was over.
It's over.
And by the way, we're gonna clip that Chiefs era is over.
It's over.
We're gonna have to stitch that with that video we made.
Back in April.
Basically, I'll say that was like
a year ago.
Last year.
Yeah.
Saying that Patrick Mahomes' era is just about done.
It's over.
Yeah.
Post Super Bowl, it's over.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about these here Colts.
Yep.
Indianapolis Colts. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of games that we could have put, especially earlier in the season when, they were really going crazy with Indiana Jones, but I had to go with the mid-season matchup for them in Week 10 versus the Falcons.
In London.
It was in London, overtime thriller, overseas game. Week 10 versus the Falcons, 31-25. Jonathan Taylor, bro. This was a fantasy night for him. 244 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. If you had him on your fantasy team, I just know you were happy this week.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a big win for them against a pretty solid Falcons team, and a huge performance from Jonathan Taylor, still showing hope for the future. But then, as we know, they kind of recessed a little bit after such an incredible start to a season.
Injuries caught up to him.
When you said recessed.
I don't know.
That's a good word.
Receded.
There you go.
Is the correct?
Yeah, they did not do as good as they started.
No.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what becomes of them when Daniel Jones comes back, if they're just as good as they were, or if they continue to recede.
Yep.
All right, the Jacksonville Jags, who, as we discussed,
Duval.
ended up being a pretty pretty solid team this year, and I have their Super Bowl coming in Week 18 versus the Titans, where they whomped them 41-7. Key stat leaders: T. Law with 255 passing yards, 3 tuds, and this was the Super Bowl because it was a huge blowout win to close the season very strongly, as well as clinching the division. So, I mean, that was just monstrous for them.
Mm-hmm.
Huge win against, the team that we've already discussed, who isn't that good, the Tennessee Titans.
Right, but a win going into the playoffs is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it was a big game for Trevor Lawrence, who was starting to peak at that point.
Yeah. And the final team, probably I would say the best team in the division, although very competitive with the Jags, the Houston Texans. I have their Super Bowl coming in Wild Card Weekend versus the Steelers.
Yeah.
They won 30-6. Huge win.
Okay.
Their defense won.
But still, and so here's where I was going with this is, even on the offensive side of the ball, Christian Kirk, 144 yards receiving and a touchdown, I believe.
Who?
And Woody Marks.
Christian Kirk?
So, now hold on. I'll get there because, and then you have Woody Marks with 112 yards rushing. Why was this their Super Bowl? Huge playoff blowout. I mean, against a more defensively minded Steelers squad, I would say.
Sure.
I mean, just a big win for a building franchise. They're
still building.
Bringing in Liam Cohen, and they're still burning. It was a big statement for them. Plus, after the game, we get the Stephen A. Smith, Christian, the C. Kirk mix-up, which
Yep.
I thought was
He just saw C. Kirk
It
and
was-
went with it.
yeah.
Yep.
It was pretty funny, so I had to give that to the Texans as their Super Bowl.
Sure.
Oh boy.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
AFC West.
All right.
We're going to kick it off again at the bottom of the barrel with the Raiders. All right.
Okay.
They also played their best game of the year and probably one of their only wins of the year. Week 1 against the Patriots. If you look back, the Patriots lost to the Raiders this year. Super Bowl contender Patriots lost 20-13 to the Raiders. And man, was this a game. Geno Smith, the Raiders look like a genius going out and getting Geno Smith here. Threw for 362 yards and a touchdown. Brock Bowers, 5 receptions for 103 yards. And they also, their new toy, Ashton Genty, found the end zone in this debut. And so the Raiders are looking hopeful. The AFC West probably scared at that point, especially, you look at the team like the Broncos losing or winning, but to the Titans. So it was an interesting game looking back on it now and looking at how the season went. But yeah, Geno Smith looked amazing. Brock Bauer, amazing. Genty found the end zone, so we got that monkey off his back. Why is this their Super Bowl? Like I said, Chip Kelly looks like a genius. Their offense exploded against a good defense. Their defense looked dominant. They put the clamps on New England, held them to 60 rushing yards, forced a pick. And then they go on to say, Pete Carroll says, Geno had a regular game today. I don't think it was a big statement game or anything like that. I just think that's what he does. Well, we go on to find out that's not what he does, and he got benched because that was the best game of his career, per se.
Yeah.
In
I don't know if it was the best game. Well, in
a Raiders uniform.
in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Yeah, Raiders uniform. There you go.
There we go. So, we go on to find out Geno didn't do very well, and that might be the last game we see Geno Smith start.
Yeah, because they're going to get
Fernando Mendoza loading. So,
Yeah.
Kansas
Kevin
City
Nash is
Chiefs.
on the same team, bro.
Feels weird to say Kansas City Chiefs at the bottom of the AFC.
Yeah.
But I'm here for that. I'm here for that content. Week 12, Kansas City Chiefs. This was pre-Mahomes blowout. They beat the Indianapolis Colts, who were then the AFC leader. So they beat them 23-20 in overtime. A lot of people had a lot of question marks. The Chiefs at this point had lost some games, and they weren't really sure where they were going. But then there was also the group that said that the Chiefs are always the Chiefs. They'll find a way to make the playoffs. And so beating the Colts, who were the AFC leaders at the time in overtime, it was just another one of those statement wins for them. They find ways to win. Patrick Mahomes threw for 352 yards. Harrison Butker hit 5 field goals. And they held what was a powerhouse of Danny Dimes and Jonathan Taylor in check the whole game. 20 points, including an overtime. And they did end up covering an 11-point comeback. So that was the Chiefs' Super Bowl for the year. And then they go on to Patrick Mahomes blows out his knee. There's a lot of questions swirling. Is this Kelsey's last season? This was actually probably the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs after that week.
Yeah.
But
I'm just glad to see that this is their Super Bowl and not the Super Bowl.
Not the
There
Super
you
Bowl.
go,
Super Bowl.
Coop. There you go.
They lose the next 6 games after this. So, Anyway, the Los Angeles Superchargers. Week 16 at Dallas gets them into the playoffs, okay? So they go into a team that is also still competing for a playoff spot at this point. This was the game that broke Dallas and sent them to Cancun. They beat Dallas 34-17. Herbert goes for 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Amarion Hampton rushed for 85 yards and a touchdown, and that was nice to get him back and get him going. Quentin Johnson, 104 receiving yards and a touchdown, and they couldn't hold Pickens in check, who had an amazing year, one of the best wide receivers in the league this year, but they held the rest of the offense in check, only giving up 17 points, very little rushing yards. This secured them a playoff spot, and this was the 4th straight win at the end of the season. And I would say that the only other one that would come close to this was either their walk-off win in Denver, where they hit a field goal to end the game, or their Week 1 win in Kansas City in Brazil to kick off the season. A lot of people, they had high expectations for Harbaugh. And so to beat Kansas City kind of, set that in motion.
All right.
Then finally, AFC
Broncos
West, we got the Broncos. And as a Broncos fan, this was kind of hard to pick, but I would say the game that I can remember watching that I finally said, this is the team, they are here to stay, they're playoff ready, was Week 15 against the Packers. And then because every other game to this point were wins, unapologetic wins, right? But they weren't filling stat sheets. There were a lot of question marks by the offense and that kind of stuff. But the Green Bay Packers to throw up 34 points against that defense, who Micah Parsons was still on the field for most of the game. This is where he blew out his knee. There was an insane interception by PS2. But as far as stats, you got Knicks throwing for 302 yards and 4 touchdowns. Cortland Sutton racking up 113 yards. RJ Harvey had 65 rushing yards and a touchdown. And the defense, like I said, had 2 epic interceptions that just broke the Packers. It extended their win streak to 11 games. This was a big win over a playoff caliber opponent, which a lot of people were hating on the Broncos at the time, just saying, okay, you're beating the Jets in a close margin. You're beating the Giants in a close margin. These are games you should be blowing teams out. You are not a Super Bowl contending team. This has kind of put them in that conversation. I also said that Week 5 against the Eagles kind of started that 11-game win streak. But I thought that this game was more of a statement game than that. And then also, if you want to go like most exciting moments, that 30-point comeback against the Giants, that fourth quarter
that
comeback
was crazy.
had to have been one of the most exciting. I remember doing the podcast after that, and I should have got my heart rate on that one because that was epic. So